Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and I've been doing a daily countdown of my 366 favorite video games of all time. Coming in at number 15 is Star Ocean Till the End of Time. If you're a little confused here, I understand. Is this game objectively better than, say, anything else in the top 50? Probably not. But I absolutely adore it anyway, and in that regard, it's kind of my, guilty pleasure pick this high up. This JRPG is basically the JRPG-iest JRPG that's ever JRPG'd. It's a very long, very grindy ordeal with anime-esque character designs and extremely over-the-top dialogue, obnoxious character names. I mean, Fate, Line God? Come on. You have a party system consisting of way too many characters, all with crazy attack names that try to be cool, but wind up being a bit too on the nose, like Fists of Fury, and the game absolutely cannot pick a genre or tone, being as much sci-fi as it is fantasy, but also, it turns out, maybe a circus? The story's all over the place, and there's loads of winding, entirely out-of-the-way side quests that don't matter in the slightest, and things more or less start with fighting bandits in a forest, but in the end you kill God. And despite all of these things, this is one of the greatest bad games ever made. Well, bad's a strong word, but being so off the rails and unhinged that it becomes a masterpiece in its own right. And I've spent well over 1,000 hours playing this stupid thing across, I think, 5 or 6 full playthroughs, including wasting a bunch of time on post-game stuff. This game is so stupid that the level cap is 255. But you're probably beating the main story around level 60. Who designed this? Who thought that would ever make sense? With all that being said, it's impossible to talk about the game without talking about the big twist in the story, because it's what actually makes this all work and be good. So bear in mind that I'm spoiling more or less everything. If you don't want spoilers, just know the story is beyond dumb, and that's why I love it. And if you like really dumb, goofy video game stories, this might be the game for you. The game follows Fate Line God, a human college student from Earth. He's on vacation with his parents and his cousin, Sophia, on this resort planet called Haida 4. Fate's dad is the preeminent expert in a field of science in this game called symbological genetics. Basically, genetic markers that allow some species throughout the galaxy to be able to cast magic. Fate is a great student, but does have one hobby. And this is really important here, and that's that he plays way too many video games. Though not like I've been doing. His video games are basically simulations that actually involve some pretty intense physical combat. And he's really good at it. I'd like to point out that you're playing a video game set in a sci-fi fantasy hybrid world, where your character plays a video game set in a sci-fi fantasy hybrid world. Hold on to that for a while, because we'll revisit it. The vacation's going great, and you're exploring around, and you run into Pepita, an extremely annoying girl that's making her debut in the circus at this resort. She's so annoying, she signs your shirt, assuming you want her autograph, despite still never having performed. It's awful. The signature includes a terrible drawing of what I assume is supposed to be her face. She's really the worst, and just when you've forgotten all about her, something like 25 hours later into the game, she comes back again out of nowhere and joins the party. Isn't that great? And oh yeah, that drawing stays on Fate's shirt for the next several hours of gameplay. And what makes that even crazier is the amount of things that happen to this poor kid while he's wearing that dumb shirt. The vacation is ruined when Vendini battleships suddenly appear around the resort and start blowing everything up in an unprecedented attack from what was previously considered a neutral party to Galactic Federation space. Fate and Sophia get separated from his parents, and they're presumably lost in the attack. Very sad. There's a cruise liner ship that's able to rescue people escaping, but then they're also attacked, and you have to take emergency escape pods while the crew goes down with the ship as true heroes. After helping Sophia with her pod, Fate gets in his and manages to navigate to a hospitable planet so he can wait for his distress beacon to find somebody. So you get to Vanguard 3, it's a planet. Its technology is roughly equivalent to 16th century Earth, so you can't exactly blend in well, but regardless, you need to do something to find food and shelter, so you head out to a nearby village, leaving your escape pod hidden. The trek is longer than anticipated, and you pass out upon arrival, but you're saved by some local kids. Fate is generally very weary of doing anything that would mess with an underdeveloped planet, and also doesn't want to have to deal with the Federation's laws about it. But he's also, you know, a hero or whatever in this game. The town is being raided by someone else that's clearly an off-worlder, and Fate goes to help one of the kids who tried protecting the town. You know, from the guy with guns. When Fate seems cornered, something starts glowing above his head, but we'll have to wait to see what that's all about. It's a doozy, because who else shows up but my favorite character in this game, Cliff Fitter. Yeah, big brutish guy named Cliff. He's physically imposing, but actually deceptively clever and witty. Oh, and despite his appearances, he's not a human, but a Clausian, an alien species in the game. They look like humans, sound like humans, but they're much stronger, faster, and tougher. Remember in Dragon Ball Z when Goku trained in extreme gravity so he could get stronger? They do that in their everyday life on their home planet because its gravity is like 2.5 times that of Earth, making them much stronger everywhere else.
Let's not sweat the details. Suffice it to say, you're my man.
Hold it right there or I'll blast you!
Huh? You talking to me?
Shut your pie hole!
All right, I'm done lecturing. Time to teach you a lesson.
I would say that Cliff rescues you, but that's not right either. You see, he's there to kidnap you. He's part of an anti-Federation group called Quark, which I suppose to Fate's eyes makes him kind of a terrorist. I'd like to point out that while he's now being kidnapped, he's still wearing this dumb shirt. Cliff knows a lot more than he lets on for quite some time, but for now, all he'll tell Fate is that the leader of Quark wants to talk to him, presumably about the events on Haida 4, but maybe other things too. So you leave Vanguard 3 and start heading to Quark's flagship. But that's cut short because you're ambushed by the Vendini ships again. You're hit and take damage to your engines and crash into another underdeveloped planet called Elicor 2. This one's a little more advanced than the last one, but it's still approximately 17th century technology. Except for the stuff that very much is not. The vast majority of the game takes place on this planet because it takes quite a while before you're rescued. You unfortunately can't do much about avoiding interference with the locals because you crashed right in the middle of the capital city of the military empire of Araglyph. Your ship is assumed to be an experimental weapon of Aquaria, the other major power on this continent that you've landed on, and Fate and Cliff are immediately arrested, and then tortured for information. It's so fun for them because they don't know what anything is, let alone how to even lie about it. Thankfully, you're rescued by a group of stealthy ladies for Aquaria that have been working as spies throughout Eriglyph. They're led by Nell, a stern woman who kicks a lot of ass. Combat in Star Ocean is pretty solid. I've talked about how fighting in this franchise works before, way back in February, when I made a video for the first Star Ocean game, and I praised how in-depth the combat was for being on the Super Nintendo. As awesome as that was for that time, it's changed very little by the time we get to PlayStation 2. Don't get me wrong, it's certainly better, but most of it's really similar. I'm sure even people that have been following along all year have forgotten about that video, so I'll go over it all again. When you run into an enemy on the map, you enter a separate area for real-time combat. You've got a party of 3 characters, and you can change who you're controlling in real time, with the others acting on their own based on basic parameters you set up ahead of time. Like you can have someone be really defensive, or have someone focus on casting supporting spells, or whatever. But you can also press triangle to open a menu, pausing combat when you do. From the menu, you can use items like berries to heal your HP or MP. Both are important, and maybe not just in the ways you're assuming, because not only do you die when you get to 0 HP, that's normal, you also die if you get to 0 MP, and there's enemies that do attacks that could damage either. You can also do this to them, making some enemies actually that's the best way to kill them, and it's a really nice little wrinkle to the combat, especially regarding some of the bosses. Importantly, you can also, from this menu, select skills that you can use, which are attacks unique to each character that they learn from leveling up, or symbology, which are basically your spells. Early in the game, symbology is rare, except for characters like Nell, but over time, you'll find books to teach even meatheads like Cliff how to throw some healing out every now and again. Symbology, of course, costs MP, but both skills and symbology, and really everything you do, including basic attacking, uses a secondary resource called Fury, which regenerates on its own when you're standing still doing nothing. It's very quick. Importantly, Fury is also tied in some ways to a shield you have, and later in the game you can equip auras that deal damage or other effects on occasion when you're hit. Speaking of equipping stuff, you can also equip shortcuts for spells and abilities, and also passive skills that you can learn from leveling or from books to really customize every character in your party. Being able to customize all of these loadouts is a lot of fun, and while the cast is definitely larger than it needs to be overall, though you don't keep everyone together all the time in the end. Every character has some unique qualities, even the ones that otherwise have overlap, like Cliff and his sidekick, Mirage. All in all, the combat is great, and has a decent amount of depth to it, and bosses are extra fun, which is, well, that's good, because there's a lot of them. But what are we doing after being rescued? Oh, did I say Nell rescued you? I meant kidnapped again. Kind of. Fate cannot catch a break. You're fully roped into this war between Aquaria and Eriglyph now, though you're certainly helping the right side of history on this one. Thankfully, an explanation presents itself for how it is that you had the ship and the technology and all of this stuff when you're asked if you're engineers from a far-off kingdom on a different continent, because they're known to have some more advanced technology in that country. Now you're being forced to help Aquaria in this war and have to develop something that will help them without, catapulting them forward like 1,000 years in the future or something in their technology. It's, it's a tough balance, but also it shouldn't matter because this planet is loaded with crazy tech. On the one hand, you have Eriglyph flying dragons, and on the other hand, you have this bustling trade town that has an inventors guild that's handing out communicators to its members, and nobody even remotely bats an eye. Like, you don't even have walkie-talkies in this place, and yet all of the inventors are walking around with video camera communicators that do everything. There's this girl named Welch Vineyard. Yep. I'll let that one, let's say, ripen. Welch runs the Inventors Guild, and at first it seems like she's creating lots of problems by bringing off-world tech, perhaps. But no, she's actually just there, and for some reason, this isn't weird to anyone. It makes no sense. Like something, well, let's say, like something in a video game, which just needs a mechanic, world building be damned. This is not a criticism. In fact, it's a feature. We're blitzing through the rest of the story here to get why this game is so fascinating to me. Fast forwarding through a whole lot of things you have to do. You fight the war for Aquaria, you save everybody, you broker peace between nations, and then you get off that damn planet and finally join up with the rest of Quark and discover that you have superpowers. And no, not like symbology, but also, yes, kind of like symbology. Fate Line God, Sophia Estede, and Maria Trador, the leader of Quark, are all similar in age within a couple years of each other. But that's not the only thing they have in common. Fate's dad and Sophia's father performed genetic experiments on the three of them as infants, giving them universe-altering powers. Fate has the power of destruction, Maria has the power of alteration, and Sophia has the power of connection. As an example, Fate obliterates a massive warship with his mind, without even knowing he's doing it. These go beyond the magic that other people can use, because this was created rather than something done by the world. What I mean by that is very weird. After their powers start awakening, there are these massive, terrifying angels of death called executioners that appear and are obliterating everything in their path. You see, these are actually, and this is the big spoiler and twist, so turn back now or forever be spoiled, an antivirus. The whole Star Ocean video game franchise, all of the games, takes place in a video game. You've gone totally rogue and your party is made up of NPCs in this video game that have gained actual sentience, and then you head to the planet Styx, where there's the time gate that was used to travel back in time in the first Star Ocean game, and you use the trio's special universal powers to break out of your dimension and join the real world. The real world, however, is also like very fantasy sci-fi, and the main city is like a rave carnival. But yeah, the creator of the video game within the video game wants to delete the video game to stop more rogue NPCs from somehow manifesting themselves into reality, but you stop him, effectively killing God, and that's the end of the game. The twist of this game was so mind-blowing to me when I was 10 years old that it stuck with me the whole time, making all of the dumb things about the game, like the outrageous character names and the silly abilities that are frequently just yelled out, and oh man, the characteresque enemies. My favorite is right away on that first planet you go to, there's these noble looking dudes that you fight in the forest, and when you beat them up, they yell out, "My money! My money!" even though they never really attack you. And I think maybe you're just robbing the Quaker Oats dude. But one of the other things that makes the game so great to me, and this is a real thing, not a silly tongue-in-cheek thing, is the amount of post-game content. There's loads to do after you beat the game. As I mentioned, the level cap is 255, still a dumb number, and you beat the game probably in the 60s. And you might need all of that level cap in the end. There are massive additional dungeons with extremely difficult enemies to fight. Often they're hidden in the world of Ellicor 2, but you can't get to them until way later, because you need something called the Disintegration Ring, which allows you to delete objects from existence. Even getting the ring is an ordeal, but it unlocks a lot of hidden treasure and, of course, dungeons. They're not all on Ellicor 2 though, and I do want to touch on the Sphere Company, which is who made the game in the game. Man, I hate saying that out loud. But anyways, when you are going through the story of this game, you just need to clear the first 5 floors of the Sphere Company's headquarters, and then you'll get to an elevator that can take you to the top floor, which is 211. You can also check out floors 6 through 100, and there's a ton of great items and things there to find, but it's optional, and you know that from the story. After you beat the game, you can do stuff to unlock floors 101 through 210. And they're really hard. And the floors aren't exactly small either. Have you ever wanted to grind through 200 plus floors of optional dungeon content? This game made me want to do that, and that might be the strongest testament to how good it actually is. That's definitely the most time-consuming thing, but if you're a real completionist, you'll want all the bunnies. And I mean all the bunnies. Most locations you go to throughout the game, on the minimap, there's a little percentage. That's the amount you've revealed for that area, and if you get to 99%, it's marked as complete, and you get a digital bunny. What the bunny does, in addition to being a trophy for you to have and collect, is give your whole party a stacking permanent 5% boost to your movement speed, so collecting these is actually really helpful to some of those harder post-game fights. But the thing I enjoyed the most out of the post-game elements was the crafting. I wanted to create a crafting empire spanning all of Elocore 2. There's a ton of different skills for inventing, and each character in your party is better or worse at certain things, but none of them are the best. There's people you can recruit or hire to work for you, and all of the really crazy people, like the killer chef, a goblin butcher of hopefully things we should be eating, but his cooking skill is sky high. Many of the people you recruit just need a lot of money, but some will only join you if you're able to track down some key item, often made by inventing, although sometimes it's in like those bonus dungeons or whatever. But I don't know why I like this so much, I just do. Which is ultimately how I feel about the whole game. There's something absolutely magical about a video game with a main protagonist that loves to play video games while inside of a video game. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 14th favorite game, where I become far too emotionally attached to a garden gnome.